The stench hit Elena Martinez the moment she knelt behind the closet, rotten, poisonous, unmistakable. Her heart hammered as she stared at the dark patch spreading across the wall, realizing with bone-chilling certainty that this room was killing him. The man sleeping 5 feet away, the millionaire who barely knew her name, was being poisoned by the very sanctuary he trusted most. Before we dive into this incredible true story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our life-changing stories. And comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels around the world. Now, let's begin. Elena Martinez pushed her cleaning cart down the gleaming marble hallway of the Holloway estate, still in awe even after 3 months of working there. 15 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a library that looked like something out of a fairy tale, gardens that seemed to stretch into forever. Everything screamed wealth, power, a life so far removed from her tiny apartment in East LA that it might as well have been another planet. But none of it mattered when she thought about him. Declan Holloway, 31 years old, tech genius, self-made millionaire before he turned 28, and dying. Or at least, that's what everyone believed. From her very first day at the estate, Elena had watched him suffer. He spent most of his time locked away in the master suite, coughing until his face turned purple, wincing with pain that seemed to radiate from somewhere deep inside his chest. The doctors had no answers. 4 specialists, dozens of tests, every scan and blood panel known to modern medicine, nothing. They called it stress, anxiety, maybe even psychosomatic illness. But Elena knew better. Bodies don't lie. Her grandmother had taught her that. "Good morning, Mr. Holloway," Elena said softly one Thursday morning, knocking gently on the heavy mahogany door. A hoarse voice called back, strained and exhausted. "Come in, Elena! Just be quick. I can barely breathe today." She pushed open the door and found him exactly as she expected, pale as death itself, sunken deep into his king-sized bed, with the curtains drawn tight against the morning sun. The air in the room felt thick, heavy, like something living and malevolent. His cough echoed through the darkness, violent and rattling, each hack making her chest tighten with sympathy. "You've been like this since I started here," she said carefully, running her cloth over the bedside table. 3 months, and you haven't gotten better at all." Declan's green eyes found hers, and for a moment, she saw something there she hadn't noticed before. Not just exhaustion, but resignation. Like he'd already accepted that this was how the rest of his life would be. "I've seen 4 doctors," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tests for everything you can imagine. Lungs, heart, allergies, autoimmune disorders. Nothing shows up. They think it might be in my head." He laughed bitterly, then immediately regretted it as another coughing fit seized him. "Stress from running the company," they say. "But the medications don't help. Nothing helps." Elena's frown deepened. She'd grown up in a neighborhood where people couldn't afford to see doctors, where home remedies and grandmother's wisdom were all you had. She'd learned to trust her instincts, to pay attention to what the body was trying to say, and something about this room felt wrong. "Do you spend all your time in here?" she asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "Mostly," Declan admitted. "I work in my office in the mornings when I can manage it, but I always end up back here. It's the only place I can rest." Her eyes swept the enormous room. Luxurious, yes. Beautiful, certainly. But dark, closed off, suffocating. The window was always shut, the heavy velvet curtains blocking out every hint of natural light. And underneath the expensive cologne and designer fabric softener, there was something else. Something she couldn't quite identify but made her stomach turn. "Can I open the window?" she asked. Declan nodded weakly, too tired to care. Elena crossed to the massive windows and yanked back the curtains. Sunlight flooded in like a revelation, pushing back shadows that seemed to have taken root in every corner. She cranked open the window, and fresh air rushed in, clean and sharp and alive. "There," she said. "That's better, isn't it?" Declan's eyes fluttered closed. "Yeah," he murmured. "Yeah, it is." As Elena moved around the room finishing her work, she noticed something. The strange smell seemed stronger near the walk-in closet that took up nearly half of one wall. She hesitated, then crouched down to peer underneath. That's when she saw it. A small, dark patch of moisture clinging to the corner where the wall met the closet frame. Her breath caught. She leaned closer, and the smell hit her full force, rotten, toxic, unmistakable. Mold. Not just any mold. Black mold. From the look of it. The kind that grew in darkness and moisture, spreading its spores through the air, attacking lungs and immune systems, and slowly, quietly, killing anyone who breathed it in day after day after day. Elena's hands started shaking. Over the next few days, she watched Declan with new eyes, tracking his symptoms like a detective. She noticed a pattern that made her blood run cold. Whenever he left the master suite, spending time in his office, walking through the gardens, sitting in the sunroom, his color improved. The cough eased. He stood straighter, smiled more easily, seemed almost like a different person. But the moment he returned to that bedroom, within an hour, sometimes less, the sickness came roaring back. The room was poisoning him. One Tuesday morning, she found him in his office, looking more alive than she'd seen in months. His eyes were bright. His cheeks had actual color. And when he smiled at her, it transformed his entire face. "How are you feeling today, sir?" Elena asked, unable to hide her surprise. "I spent the whole morning out here," Declan said, and there was wonder in his voice. "No coughing, no headache, no chest pain. Maybe the doctors were right. Maybe it is just stress, and keeping my mind busy helps." Elena didn't respond. She had a theory now, but she needed to be sure. That evening, after everyone else had left, she returned to the master suite one more time. Declan lay sleeping, his face turned toward the wall where the mold was growing. Elena crept closer, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it would wake him. The dark patch had spread. Not much, just a few inches, but enough to confirm what she already knew. This wasn't going away on its own. And if Declan kept sleeping here, kept breathing in those spores night after night, her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, clear as a bell. Moisture grows where it can't be seen. Mija. And it kills quietly, without mercy. Elena stood there in the darkness, frozen between two impossible choices. She could stay silent, keep her head down, do her job, collect her paycheck, and tell herself it wasn't her responsibility. She was just the housekeeper. After all, who was she to question doctors, to presume she knew better than specialists with decades of training? Or she could speak up, risk everything, her job, her reputation, maybe even the roof over her head, and her sisters to save a man who barely knew she existed. She carried that weight home with her, the decision pressing down on her shoulders until she could barely stand. Her younger sister, Maya, was making quesadillas in their cramped kitchen when Elena walked through the door. "You look terrible," Maya said immediately, abandoning the stove to pull out a chair. What happened? Elena told her everything. The mold, Declan's illness, the pattern she'd noticed, the impossible choice sitting in front of her like a test she wasn't prepared for. Maya's face went pale. "Elena, that mold could kill him. If he's breathing it every single day, that's why he's sick. You have to tell him." "But what if he doesn't believe me?" Elena's voice cracked. "I'm just the cleaning lady. What if he thinks I'm crazy? Or worse, that I'm trying to get attention or cause drama? I could lose my job. We need that money for your nursing school." "Stop." Maya grabbed her sister's hands, squeezing hard. "You're the only one who sees it. The only one who's paying attention. This is bigger than fear, Elena. This is about saving someone's life. You can't stay silent. You won't forgive yourself if you do." Elena barely slept that night. She tossed and turned, playing out a dozen different scenarios in her head. Most of them ended with her being fired, dismissed as a hysterical woman who'd overstepped her bounds. But a few, just a few, ended with Declan believing her, with her actually saving his life. By morning, she'd made her choice. Elena arrived at the Holloway estate before dawn. her stomach churning with nerves. She found Declan in his office, already working despite the early hour. He looked up when she knocked, surprise crossing his features. "Elena? Is everything okay?" "Mr. Holloway," she said, and her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I need to talk to you. It's important. It's about your health." Something in her tone must have convinced him because he immediately closed his laptop and gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit, please." Elena sat, her hands clasped tight in her lap to keep them from shaking. Then, carefully and clearly, she told him everything. The damp patch behind the closet, the smell, the pattern she'd noticed, how his symptoms eased when he left the room and returned when he came back. She told him about her grandmother's warnings, about growing up in homes where moisture and mold were constant battles, about learning to recognize the signs. Declan listened without interrupting, his expression moving from skepticism to confusion, to something that might have been hope. "Why would it only affect me in that room?" he asked when she finished. "Because that's where the mold is concentrated," Elena explained. "You feel fine everywhere else, the office, the gardens, the guest rooms. But when you return to the master suite, you're breathing in spores that attack your respiratory system. I've seen it before, Mr. Holloway. Not in mansions, but in apartments and old houses. It's exactly the same." For a long moment, Declan just stared at her. Then he stood abruptly. "Show me." They climbed the stairs together, and Elena led him to the master suite. Her heart hammered as she knelt behind the massive closet and pointed to the dark patch spreading across the corner. "There," she said. "That's where it's worst." Declan crouched beside her, peering at the nearly invisible stain. Then he leaned forward and inhaled cautiously. The reaction was immediate. He recoiled violently, his hand flying to cover his nose and mouth. "Oh my God," he choked out. "How did I never? Why didn't I?" "Because it's hidden," Elena said softly. "Because the room is always dark and closed up. Because you've been too sick to notice. But it's there, Mr. Holloway, and it's making you sick." Declan turned to look at her, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. Not anger or dismissal, but gratitude so profound it almost hurt to witness. "You saved my life," he whispered. "You actually saved my life." The transformation happened faster than Elena could have imagined. Declan called in mold specialists that same day, and their assessment confirmed everything she'd told him. Toxic black mold, hidden behind the closet for God only knew how long, probably caused by a slow leak in the pipes running through that wall. The spores had been slowly poisoning him for months, maybe longer. They sealed off the master suite immediately. Declan moved into a guest room on the opposite side of the house, while contractors tore apart the walls, removed every trace of contamination, and rebuilt everything from scratch. And within a week, Declan Holloway was a different man. The cough disappeared. Color flooded back into his face. He stood straighter, moved with energy Elena had never seen before. He worked longer hours, laughed more freely, started going outside to walk the grounds instead of being trapped in bed. But something else changed too. One evening, about 2 weeks after the discovery, Declan found Elena in the library, dusting the countless shelves of books. He cleared his throat awkwardly, and she turned to find him holding a small envelope. "I wanted to thank you," he said. "Properly. I've spoken with my accountant, and we've arranged a bonus for you. It's not nearly enough for what you did. But, Mr. Holloway, I don't need." "Please," he interrupted gently. "Let me do this. You saved my life. That's worth more than any amount of money, but it's all I have to offer right now." Elena took the envelope with shaking hands, knowing even before she opened it that whatever was inside would be life-changing. When she saw the amount, her knees nearly buckled. Enough to pay for Maya's remaining nursing school tuition. Enough to finally fix the leak in their apartment ceiling. Enough to breathe, really breathe, for the first time in years. Tears blurred her vision. "Thank you," she whispered. "No," Declan said firmly. "Thank you. I don't think you understand what you did. Those doctors, all their training and experience and expensive equipment, And not one of them saw what you saw. You trusted your instincts. You had the courage to speak up even when it could have cost you everything. That's extraordinary, Elena. Something passed between them in that moment. Something neither of them quite understood yet. A connection that went beyond employer and employee, beyond gratitude and duty. The beginning of something neither of them had been looking for. In the weeks that followed, Declan started seeking Elena's opinion on things. Not just cleaning schedules or household maintenance, but real decisions. He asked her thoughts on redesigning the master suite, on managing the estate more efficiently, on hiring and supervising the other staff members. You notice things, he told her once. You pay attention in a way most people don't. I'd be a fool not to use that. He enrolled her in a professional development program, courses in household management, financial planning, even basic business administration. At first, Elena protested, insisting she was fine with just being a housekeeper. But Declan wouldn't hear it. You're capable of so much more, he said. I see it. Why can't you? Slowly, carefully, Elena began to see it too. She threw herself into the courses, discovering skills and interests she never knew she had. She started dressing differently, carrying herself with a quiet confidence that made the other staff members take notice. She wasn't just the housekeeper anymore. She was becoming someone new. One Saturday morning, Declan suggested they visit the downtown farmers market together. Elena hesitated, the old boundaries between them, making her nervous. But something about the way he asked, hopeful, almost shy, made her say yes. The market was alive with color and sound and movement. Children darted between stalls while street musicians played, and the air smelled of fresh bread and roasted coffee and flowers. Declan was transformed here, relaxed and open in a way Elena had never seen at the estate. I can't believe I've lived in Los Angeles my whole life and never came here, he said, examining a hand-painted ceramic mug. Elena smiled. Most people live in their own little bubbles. They don't see beyond their routines. Well, I'm glad I'm seeing it now, Declan said softly, his eyes on her instead of the market. With you. Over the following weeks, the distance between them continued to shrink. Conversations lasted longer. Smiles came more easily. Elena found herself thinking about him at odd moments, the way he laughed, how he listened when she spoke, the gratitude that still shone in his eyes whenever he looked at her. But she was also terrified. She knew how the world saw situations like this. The wealthy employer, the poor employee, the power imbalance that made everything complicated and potentially dangerous. She'd seen enough movies and read enough stories to know how badly this could end. One evening, Declan found her tending the balcony plants, and his nervousness was almost palpable. Elena, he said, his voice low and uncertain, would you have dinner with me tomorrow? Just us. No work, talk, no business, just getting to know each other better. Elena's heart raced. Every logical part of her brain screamed that this was a terrible idea, that she should maintain professional boundaries, that mixing business with personal feelings never ended well. But the other part, the part that had come to admire his kindness, his gratitude, the way he saw her as more than just hired help, couldn't say no. I'd like that, she heard herself say. The next evening, Declan picked her up from her apartment building, looking nervous and handsome in a way that made her stomach flutter. He drove them to a small restaurant tucked away from the city's main streets, the kind of place with wooden tables and candlelight, and live acoustic music drifting through the air. Over dinner, they talked, really talked, about his pressure as a young tech entrepreneur, the loneliness of success, the way illness had isolated him even before the mold, about her childhood struggles, losing her parents young, raising Maya practically by herself, the weight of responsibility she'd carried since she was barely more than a child herself. They laughed, they shared stories, and slowly, carefully, the barriers between employer and employee dissolved into something gentler, something more human. I need to tell you something, Declan said as dessert arrived. I've been thinking about this for weeks now, and I can't keep it to myself anymore. Elena's breath caught. What is it? You changed my life, he said simply. Not just by finding the mold. You changed how I see everything. Before you, I was just existing, going through the motions, accepting that this was as good as life would get. But you showed me that paying attention matters, that courage matters, that people can surprise you if you just take the time to really see them. His hand reached across the table, stopping just short of touching hers. I don't know what this is between us, or where it might go. I know the optics are complicated. I know people will judge, but I also know that I've never felt this way about anyone before, and I don't want to ignore it just because it's inconvenient or unconventional. Elena stared at his hand, so close to hers, and felt the future hanging in the balance. She could pull back, maintain the safe distance between them, protect herself from potential heartbreak and the whispers that would inevitably follow. Or she could be brave one more time. She reached out and laced her fingers through his. I don't know what this is either, she said softly, but I'd like to find out. The weeks that followed were both wonderful and terrifying. They kept their growing relationship quiet at first. But Elena knew the other staff members noticed the way Declan looked at her now. The extra time they spent together. The gentle touches that lasted a beat too long. The whispers started. Nothing overt, but Elena caught the sidelong glances, heard the conversations that stopped abruptly when she entered a room. She knew what they were saying, what they were thinking. Gold digger. Social climber. A girl from the wrong side of the tracks trying to marry up. It hurt more than she wanted to admit. One evening, she found Declan in his office and told him they needed to slow down, maybe even stop entirely. People are talking, she said, hating how small her voice sounded. They think I'm using you, that I'm only interested because of your money. Declan's face darkened. Let them think whatever they want. I know the truth. You saved my life when you had nothing to gain from it. You risked your job to help me. That's not someone who's using me, that's someone with more integrity than most people I know. But the optics? I don't care about optics, he said fiercely. I spent my whole life worrying about what other people thought, trying to live up to expectations, to be the perfect son, the perfect businessman. And you know what it got me? Sick, isolated, miserable. You showed me there's another way to live. I'm not going back. Elena felt tears threatening. I'm scared, she admitted. This could all fall apart so easily. Then we'll deal with it together, Declan said, taking her hands in his. I'm not asking you to give up your independence or your dreams. I'm asking you to take a chance on something real. On us. Right. The turning point came when Declan invited her to meet his parents. Elena was terrified, convinced they would see her as nothing more than the help, someone beneath their son's station. But to her surprise, when Declan explained how she'd saved his life, how she'd seen what trained medical professionals had missed, his parents' skepticism melted into genuine respect. You have remarkable instincts, Declan's mother said over dessert, and more courage than most people twice your age. I can see why my son values you so highly. Later that night, after the dinner, Declan found Elena sitting in the estate garden, staring up at the stars. I'm sorry if that was overwhelming, he said, sitting beside her on the bench. Your parents were wonderful, Elena said truthfully. But I can't help thinking, I don't belong in that world. Not really. I'll always be the girl from East LA who cleaned houses. Declan shook his head firmly. You saved my life. You've completely transformed how this estate runs. You're finishing your management certification at the top of your class. You're helping your sister get through nursing school. You've accomplished more in 3 months than most people do in years. He turned to face her fully. I don't see a housekeeper when I look at you, Elena. I see the most remarkable woman I've ever met. And I choose you. Every day. I choose you. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of hope instead of fear. I choose you too, she whispered. The months that followed weren't perfect. There were still difficult moments, still people who judged, still times when Elena questioned whether she really belonged in Declan's world. But they faced each challenge together, building something solid on a foundation of respect, gratitude, and a love that had grown from the most unexpected of circumstances. Maya graduated from nursing school with honors and got a job at a prestigious hospital. Elena completed her management certification and officially became the estate manager, overseeing all household operations with skill and confidence. And Declan's health continued to improve. His business thrived, and he found himself happier than he'd ever imagined possible. One morning, they sat together on the balcony, coffee steaming in the cool air, watching the sun rise over Los Angeles. "Do you remember that first day?" Declan asked, reaching for her hand. "When you found the mold?" Elena smiled. "How could I forget? I was terrified. If you hadn't spoken up," he said softly, "I honestly don't know if I'd still be here. You didn't just save my life physically. You saved me in every way that matters." Elena squeezed his hand, looking out over the estate that had become her home in ways she never could have predicted. "I didn't do it for praise or reward. I did what was right, and I'm grateful every day that it brought us here." Declan turned to her, and in his eyes she saw not just love, but partnership, equality, a future they would build together as equals. "I'll spend the rest of my life showing you what you mean to me," he promised. In that quiet morning, surrounded by bird song and the gentle rustle of leaves, they understood something profound. Helping someone is never just about the immediate act. It's about having the courage to speak up when it matters, to trust your instincts, to risk everything for what's right. And, sometimes, if you're very lucky, that courage opens doors you never knew existed. Elena Martinez had walked into the Holloway estate 3 months ago as a housekeeper, invisible and overlooked. She'd found a deadly secret that could have killed. She'd risked everything to speak the truth. And in doing so, she'd discovered that the greatest transformations often begin with the smallest acts of courage. Thank you so much for watching this story. If Elena's courage inspired you, if her journey from invisibility to finding her voice moved you, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below telling us, would you have had the courage to speak up if you were in Elena's position? Do you think their relationship can thrive despite their different backgrounds? And don't forget to tell us what city or country you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel around the world. Hit that subscribe button for more incredible true stories of courage, love, and transformation. We'll see you in the next one.